Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to express my thanks to Dan Wong and the organizers of this conference for inviting me to present again. I truly wish I could be there in person to reconnect with so many friends and colleagues after so many years of only connecting on screen. But as my mother would say, family first. For those of you who don't know me, I have about 30 years plus experience in this unique industry of producer responsibility, not only in Ontario, but Canada and internationally. I was actively involved in the startup in the province of Ontario of programs and have seen its evolution, the changes over the years across all types of products and materials. When I presented in Vancouver in 2019, that session was about the first year's operational experience under Ontario's new regulatory approach for used tires. And that regulatory approach was going to be used for other materials over time. Since that time, Ontario has introduced 4 new regulations that saw the wind up of the original industry funding organizations, as they were known, that were established under the previous legislation. Each transition has been different. They've had their ups and downs, and COVID certainly did not help. But today, I'm going to give you our unique perspective and experiences on what has transpired in Ontario since 2019, and what are some of the learnings and challenges we see ahead. By way of introduction to new conference participants, or as a reminder to returning participants, Rise Solutions was created in 2018 as a division of the Emterra Group. Emterra is an integrated resource recovery company whose DNA is in curbside blue box collection, material processing, and marketing. For over 45 years, under the Emterra environmental banner, the company is providing services across 4 provinces in Canada and the state of Michigan. RISE was created specifically to be a producer responsibility organization, or PRO, in response to the new tire regulation that was announced in 2018 in Ontario, as it was going to impact another business of Emterra's called Emterra Tire Recycling. ETR operates one of the province's largest tire hauling networks and a crumb rubber facility in Ontario that the new tire regulation was definitely going to impact. RISE was started to provide pro services to small, medium, and large tire producers who are obligated under the regulation and to provide choice in the marketplace. While RISE does work with ETR on hauling and processing of tires, RISE also works independently with other haulers and other processors in the province to make the best arrangements for our customers. For ETR, RISE is just one of the pros that they work with. As we enter the last quarter of the 4th year of the program, there is now an operational rhythm to the program. Investments have been made in tire processing across the province, and RISE works to make sure that our customers are in compliance and they have the support they need from us. So as Ontario began to roll out new regulations for batteries in mid-2020, electronics and electrical equipment, or E as it's called, at the start of 2021, and then blue box materials and hazardous special products in mid-2021, we decided that RISE would provide pro services for each of these regulated materials. We did this simply to provide small, medium, and large producers with support, clarity, honesty on how the regulations would impact them, to give them the feeling that they are in fact the customer to us, not a regulated member, or to provide customized or specialized services if required by the customer. Today, RISE is the first and largest multi-material pro. We are the only organization to provide producers with pro services across all 5 of the regulations, including pro services for lighting, which begins in January 2023 under the E regulation. We have a number of clients who we provide pro services across 2 or more of the regulations. This provides producers with a single point of contact, a form of in-house support, who is there to help them as a customer, not as a regulated entity. Now, this slide presents a quick snapshot of the current status of the programs in Ontario. I'm not going to go through each of these columns, but what we have done here is to summarize information, including the number of producers that have registered with the authority, called the RPRA in Ontario. Now remember, not all registered producers will have management requirements under the regulation, and therefore they may not need the services of a pro, but they have registered with the authority. We've also included the number of pros that are registered for each of the regulations, the number of pros that are for profit as opposed to not for profit. And this has been an issue that has come up time and time again that we like to address head on. We know that this is a concern for some companies, but not for many others, frankly. We know some of the not-for-profits that have operated across Canada have done some things that most people would not expect. So we think that for-profit pros fit in this regulation. We've also provided information about the number of pros that provide an integrated service versus a managed service. So integrated service, we mean that provides some form of hauling or processing support directly to producers. Again, this is another area that we've had to address over time that we feel is a benefit actually to our customers. We think this is a good thing. For example, some of the tires that we collect from Canadian Tire retail locations in Ontario go directly into new playgrounds that are supported by Canadian Tire's Jumpstart program initiative across Canada. This type of arrangement is a form of circular economy and would only be possible through our integrated services to our client. So some of the general observations that we'd like to identify from that table is that there are now currently about 2,200 producers registered with the RPRA. In Ontario, the RPRA is the party responsible for compliance with the regulations. We believe that there remains unregistered producers across each of the regulations, so this is a number that we expect to increase significantly. There are over 30 pros operating in Ontario across the 5 regulations. It's a mix of profit and not-for-profit, with the majority of them actually being for-profit. It's a mix of integrated pros and managed services pros. We also know that the largest pros have been those that have been given a head start. That means that they've either come from another provincial territory or had previous position in Ontario, either as an ISP or an IFO, where there has been in the past substantial investments from consumers and producers. But we also know that those pros also had the benefit of connections with producers, access to their supply data, collection volumes, and cost information that startup pros such as ourselves have not been party to. One of the unique features in Ontario is the expectation for pros to work together cooperatively to ensure that there's a viable and accessible collection network. This remains one of the areas that we've had significant challenges over time, especially during the startup period for each of the regulations. Some pros come to this understanding cooperatively and want to work together, but it has also been our experience that for some pros, this is an area that they like to resist. We hope this is one area where we can experience improvements in future years. Producers ultimately do have choice and will ultimately decide if they favor competitive pros or not in Ontario. And by way of conclusion, I had the unique opportunity this summer to meet with a gentleman who had been involved in the German packaging program since its beginning. He had seen his organization transition from the single monopoly over many years through transition to competitive pros, where they were initially the largest pro, and now in a situation where they're no longer the largest pro. I asked him, after all of these years, which is the best model for the producer? Without hesitation, he said, hands down, the competitive model is best for producers as it fosters innovation, demands improvement and customer service, and keeps pros from being complacent and taking producers for granted. In 2019, I said we're at the infancy stages in Ontario's regulatory change. Today, I still feel that we're in the early stages, I'll call it the preschool stages, of this new approach in the province. I hope to be able to report at the next stewardship conference of continued growth, maturity, and stability over the coming years. I thank you for listening to my comments. My colleague, Carmelina Macario, will be joining the panel. And as always, we are available to discuss our first of its kind pro service in the province. Thank you and have a great day.